Hey guys, Sean here. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And guess what? The West is hitting Russia with yet another round of sanctions. This time, the G7 or the group of 7 countries have decided to ban Russian gold completely. And this means that Russia won't be able to sell their gold exports to countries including the UK, United States, Germany, and Japan. Now, on the surface, this sounds quite devastating. The G7, after all, accounts for 50% of the global wealth and 45% of the global GDP, so this isn't really a small issue. However, if we take a deeper look, we will realize that this move isn't going to be game over for Russia and has the potential to backfire big time on the G7. Now, we have already seen Russia hit back at the previous sanctions by forcing Europe to buy gas using rubles, or they would literally just shut off the gas tap. Now, Putin and his gang still have some cards left to play, and we will be discussing what those are and why we need to pay attention. Because if this unfolds in Russia's favor, we could see the value of gold and the ruble actually go up while the dollar goes down. Now, President Biden has declared victory on Twitter, saying that the gold sanctions will deny Putin the money he needs to continue funding the war. And I totally understand the motivation. You want the war to stop and you're trying to close off any revenue stream Russia can get that really doesn't affect you, right? Remember, these are selective sanctions. Germany, Italy, and France are still enjoying Russian gas because it benefits them. So the boogeyman is now gold. Now, this seems problematic because Russia is the world's second biggest producer of gold after China, mining around 330 tons a year. Now, that's $20 billion worth, and it is a lot of money. And if we look closer at how much Russia exports, it's almost the majority of what they mine. Now, this isn't a non-event that we can afford to ignore because it not only could affect the price of gold, it actually foretells the future of the kind of financial war that's being waged today. Now, we need to dig beyond the surface and realize that this just isn't a financial chess move against Russia, but an indirect attack on gold as well. Real money is being targeted here, and you quickly realize why this is important. So let's talk about the big agenda, right? Firstly, I need to mention that this will cause pain to Russia 100%. There's no escaping the effects. A huge part of the gold trade is controlled by the UK's LBMA exchange. The majority of Russian gold flows through there and then gets distributed to other buyers across the world. It gets to be exported to the rest of the globe. And because of this, Russia could see its revenue from gold drop by 80 or even 90% easily in the immediate effect. So this does put Russia in a difficult situation, and they only have two routes left. And the first is to sell to the east. They might be forced to sell their gold at a discount to China or India, like what they're already doing with their oil. Maybe it's 5 or 10% off the spot price, but it is without a doubt that they can offload it to another country. Now, the G7 controls a lot of financial power, but it doesn't represent the whole world. And if Russia does decide to sell their gold to China, the G7 is actually helping China take one step closer towards becoming a bigger financial power on the world stage. And it's actually helping the country solve their biggest headache, which is trying to protect and diversify their assets away from US sanctions. Now, China can simply gobble up this cheap Russian gold and then sell their own gold production to the West at the market price, and no one will know. Now, China long has been hoarding physical gold because they know it's few assets left on this earth that has no counterparty risk. Now, even if the Chinese government decides not to stockpile Russian gold, this discount window will entice traders and refiners outside of the G7 to make money on this arbitrage. Now, they can simply buy up the Russian gold, they'll melt it down, combine them back into bars, and reintroduce them back into the market. And the big irony is that the gold will eventually flow back to the West at the same price, but it will be the East that will be making money. But let's talk about Russia's second option, which is the more dangerous path for both Putin and the G7, in particular, the US dollar. If Russia decides not to sell their gold but instead stockpile everything, or at least a majority of it, we could see a chain reaction that could see the dollar lose its reserve status even faster. Let's quickly make an assumption here that Russia still needs foreign currency to trade and fight the war, and that means they have to sell something. Guess what? The world is still facing high inflation thanks to energy shortages, and the food crisis is still happening. And we all know that Russia is one of the biggest exporters of oil and gas, as well as a major player when it comes to wheat. Now, what Russia could do as a counter strategy is to start pricing the rest of their commodities like wheat and base metals in ruble. They are already doing it for their gas, and they have nothing left to lose. They have hundreds of billions of dollars already frozen by the US, and they are now back to a corner, and this isn't a myth. Russia's already discussing it openly, and it's probably just a matter of time. Now, if Russia decides to buy up all of their own domestic gold supply and use it to back up the ruble, this will suddenly cause chaos in the financial world. Suddenly, this will mean that countries can use rubles to buy energy and food and also redeem them for gold. And this will add another layer of credibility to the ruble and put their gold to good use. After all, they can't sell it to the West anymore, right? Now, this will create more organic demand for rubles. It's now becoming a commodity-backed currency, and this demand will come from the US dollar. We can literally see money flow out of the dollar into rubles because now you can buy tangible things, tangible commodities from Russia, while gold can keep its value relatively stable. In fact, the ruble is already one of the strongest performing currency of 2022 despite the sanctions, and I find it very hilarious. But the go-back ruble is the financial nuclear option because once you do this, you are effectively declaring war on all other fiat currencies as well, and it is a coin toss on how this could end. Does Russia have enough gold to make it happen? Maybe they have, and I'm sure they won't reveal the real numbers just yet. And this is the big problem with sanctions. It just opens up Pandora's box for all kinds of weird situations that could just spiral out of control. You confiscated Russia's stockpile of dollars, they counter it with their gas or rubles move. If you ban Russia gold, they might just hit back with a gold standard. And this is the law of unintended consequences, and I hope the G7 has mapped this out carefully and not just come to this decision after a night of food and wine during their summit. So this ban is actually just symbolic at best. It will hurt Russia in the short term for sure, but long term wise, the demand will be soaked up either at home or from China. But the biggest tragedy is that this move will split the world further apart. You see, when the G7 bans Russian gold, it could spike up the price for the entire world and not just for these 7 countries. Asia will be affected, Latin America will be affected, and this unilateral decision doesn't speak for every country. We must realize that many countries are already wary of the financial sanctions imposed, and I'm sure every central bank is just waiting for the war to end to ramp up their gold purchases once again. Just imagine what they are thinking. Our dollars could get frozen if we don't behave, and now Russian gold is off the market and it'll be more costly to buy gold. And ironically, this will just cause more countries to diversify away from the dollar and hoard even more of this precious metal. We better grab more gold before even crazier sanctions happen down the road. So on one hand, we could have a situation where at least for some time, China and India can buy gold at lower prices, while the West can only purchase gold at a higher market price, and there's no way to prevent this. If the G7 decides to sanction countries like China, they will risk the world splitting into factions and even a world war. Now, another possibility is the US could impose price caps on Russian gold like what they are proposing for Russian oil, but that will be a very stupid move. Now, if the spot price for gold is say $2,000 and you dictate that other countries can only buy gold from Putin at around $1,000, you will trigger the biggest rush for Russian gold in history. Every country will stop mining their own gold and rush to buy up Russia's gold, and that is even if Russia decides to sell. In fact, it will just backfire and force them to push further towards a gold-backed ruble. So no matter where you turn, there's really no good escape. The G7, they've essentially boxed themselves into a corner. But the worrying thing is the move to try and control how the world buys commodities. They are really beginning to look more like a bunch of James Bond villains, and this will make shortages even worse and cause prices to soar as countries will decide to just stockpile more of their food, oil and metals just in case something happens, and you can't really blame them, right? But what does this mean for gold investors? How will this madness impact you and me? Now, it's going to be very simple. We can prepare for more price volatility in gold because the world will be on pins and needles about what's going to happen next. But one thing's for certain, there will be a climate of fear and less trust in the West. The dollar might continue to appreciate for the time being, but countries will be thinking twice if it's safe to hold on to their treasuries. Is it worth it to hold on to our dollars, or maybe diversify away into gold now before there are further restrictions that could cause the price to soar even further? And if central banks decide to stockpile more physical gold, we could see the price of gold continue to rise, right? Because it's no longer just a question of hedging against inflation, but holding an asset that's zero credit or counterparty risk. So even though we might be slipping into a recession and other assets are imploding, we could see gold continue to stay strong despite interest rates going up. In fact, the price of gold could very well rise in the next 6 to 12 months. It's a definite possibility. Now, if Russia continues to sell their gold to China or India and nothing happens, then we'll see a gold build up in the east and the economies over there become stronger compared to the west who are only stockpiling cash. But for you and me, we could face the consequences of a Russian gold ban in the form of higher physical premiums as well. Now, if refiners need additional checks and balances to ensure their gold doesn't come from Russia, whom do you think the extra cost will be passed down to, right? It'll be passed down to us, the consumer. And this is why it's so frustrating to see all these sanctions just being slapped around unilaterally, because it doesn't affect 7 countries, it affects everyone. And I believe this Russian gold ban is something that we should pay attention to, because it's fast becoming a strategy of the West to control the flow and price of commodities. Right now, we can still purchase our gold coins and bars without much trouble, but 5 or 10 years down the road, we really don't know what will be in store. But I do know the current trend and immediate result of this gold ban. Countries like China and India will benefit as gold in Russia will continue to stay in the east. Now, China will be taking one step closer towards a stronger currency, and we have no idea how big their gold reserves are. The official numbers tells us that they hold close to 2,000 tons of gold, but I won't be surprised if that number is actually double, triple, or even quadruple. For you and I, it's likely with all these sanctions being thrown around, gold could get more expensive thanks to the G7. Refiners can't source anymore for Russian gold, so they'll be forced to jack up their prices. So even though markets are crashing and asset prices are dropping across the board, I'm still purchasing gold, maybe not as much as before, but I still want to get my hands on more physical bars and coins, because something tells me that the war on gold just isn't done yet. So let me know what you think about the Russian gold ban. Will it affect the gold price? But more importantly, will it change the way you see the future of gold? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, and if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for more investing videos as we navigate through stocks, the economy, and precious metals in today's crazy times. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon.